Hello again. Welcome to Southeastern 16. Today we are giving you a preview of Texas A&M's road trip to Kentucky. We'll give you our predictions at the end. If you're not there, you may catch this 6 Central on ESPN2. Again, this game in Rupp Arena. We do not have a line as we're doing this. However, Ken Pomeroy favors Kentucky, I think, by about 3 as we're doing this. Very interesting contrast in styles, and I'll give you a little hint. I think we all differ a little bit on how this could play out because stylistically, Max Barr, we couldn't get a lot different than what you'll see between A&M and Kentucky in the way that they play.
Yeah, pay attention to, as we record this on Monday, tonight at about 7:10 Central when that initial injury report comes out. When asked if Wade Taylor had a recovery timetable, Williams did not oblige. So we do not know if Wade Taylor, I'm going to guess Wade Taylor's not playing. That's going to be my guess.
I am too.
But pay attention to that injury report. Guys, I think as far as a betting line, as far as odds, probably about Kentucky somewhere in between -3.5 and -5.5, I would guess. Probably somewhere between 2-3 possession favorite for the Cats.
Well, yeah, talk about two teams that came off of games played in completely different ways, and I think that's the story here. We talked about it, 88 free throws in that Texas A&M Alabama game, 58 fouls, and the difference is that while Alabama is seen as a team that's going to shoot a lot of threes, they're also really good at getting to the free throw line, right? And so, meanwhile, Kentucky doesn't really get a large distribution of their points from the free throw line. They're going to shoot the three. We know that. They're shooting it still at a high percentage, 36.7%, 54th nationally as it stands right now, shooting 57.4% from two. That's 29th nationally. A&M defensively, a physical, rugged type team. And also, we know what A&M's going to do well. They're going to go catch every single miss that they have off the backboard. 44.4% offensive rebounding percentage rate right now. Of course, that's the best in the country. Like, think about that. They're almost catching like every other miss they're getting an offensive rebound on. It's just absurd. But so I think the story of this game is that we've said if you're looking at some of the things Kentucky has struggled with, it's teams that get to the free throw line a lot and teams that are just bumping, physical, how is the game called, all those things I think are going to factor in for both these teams. Texas A&M coming off of a disappointing home loss to Alabama, even without Wade Taylor. You know, that's another one you're trying to snag a win somewhere. And then Kentucky coming off the huge win at Mississippi State.
To me, this is a who gets the kind of game they want. And let's start with A&M offensively first. I think we both think Wade Taylor's probably not playing. They haven't said, but the last notification we had on Wade Taylor was that it was a groin injury. Those are tough. Those usually take you weeks. I know he didn't suit up 2 games ago against Oklahoma, and I'm pretty sure he was on street clothes in the bench against Alabama too. I think to go from that to playing a couple days later with the travel in between seems unlikely. So to me, it is Zurich Phelps. And to me, the question is for your A&M, Max, can they score enough to keep up with Kentucky if it becomes the kind of track meet or choose your words that Kentucky would probably like this game to become?
Yeah, it's fascinating because, like Blake brought up, Kentucky has really struggled with the physicality, and you know what Texas A&M is going to bring there. And it was Porter Moser who said with Wade Taylor out, they were so much bigger that we had such a hard time trying to get any dribble penetration on them because they're just 6'4", 6'5" across the board now, especially with how all physical they already are. So that's definitely a factor. But also on the flip side, this is a Texas A&M defense that's kind of built to let you chuck it, kind of built to let you shoot a lot of threes. If you look at the past few games, Alabama, 13 threes, Oklahoma, 14 threes. You go back a few more games to some of the more high-volume three-point shooting teams they've played. 9 threes to Purdue. You gave up double-digit threes to Texas Tech. I go on and on to say I'd be very surprised if Kentucky isn't flirting with or over double-digit threes in this game. So then that backs up your point, Chris. If Kentucky is making their threes, which they're going to get their opportunities, can A&M keep up without Wade Taylor offensively?
Well, and keep in mind, these last two games these two teams have played have been offensive, sort of displays. Like, go back to last year. I know it's different now, but if anything, you would think, well, Kentucky is better offensively, so could that mean even more of that? 97-87, that game in the SEC tournament last year, and then 97-92, the overtime game in College Station, which, again, was kind of a game of the year type scenario also, that game that Texas A&M won. And, again, the Aggies won both of those games, right? So, meanwhile, I think this is kind of one where, as you said, Max, like A&M offensively is what I'm looking at here to see how do they sort of keep up. And if there is no Wade Taylor, which again we can't project that. We're recording this on Monday morning. We don't know. Injury report will be out Monday night. We'll have a better idea. Guarantee you, he'll probably either still be questionable with an undisclosed injury or something like that. That'll be
Game
kind of what we're
time.
given. Most likely, yeah, it'll be something of that nature. But I think so. From that standpoint, to me, it is what does A&M do offensively here, knowing that even as good as they are defensively, you've got to think Kentucky at home is going to get a lot of the looks that they want, right? Because, I mean, just go back to some of the previous games they played at home. We talked about it. I mean, they've scored 103, 100, 97, 108, 105, 93, 106. Like, those are just some of the scoring outputs they've had at home this season. Now, you could say this defensively is going to be the best team they played in Lexington this season with the Aggies. But, yeah, like that's just – it's one of those things where I'm very curious to see what A&M can do offensively, but also, want to see the physicality here of this kind of game, knowing that A&M could make this a bit of a slugfest. I mean, that hasn't gone well in a couple of those instances for the Cats. So,
Blake, you said something that sent me scurrying, and I'm just going to enter this into the record as a footnote. I don't know what it means, but A&M had a stretch last year with about 2 months where it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. And you're going, oh, like this is last year. College teams change from year to year. Well, this A&M team's got about as much roster continuity as anybody from last year to this year. You remember that stretch last year where it was mid-February, late February, and A&M just could not score. I mean, 56 points at Georgia. Heck, it was into March. I'd forgotten it was that late. 70 points at Georgia. I guess that's when it started going up. But, okay, here's the one I was looking for. 51 points at Tennessee and then 68 at South Carolina. This team was just miserable offensively. And then we get into March. 97 in a win at Kentucky, 90 in a loss to Florida, 98 in a win over Nebraska in the NCAA tournament, and 95 in the loss to a Houston team that can just lock you down. They have just been a weird team, this roster offensively. There are times that you're like, surely they're not going to win a track meet with somebody, and then they kind of go out and do it after just being horrid. I mean, middle of the season last year, they were about as bad offensively in terms of especially shooting the ball as anybody in the league.
And that was kind of the switch to Obaski starting.
Yeah.
When Obaski just kind of just went on a tear. Guys, one angle that is really jumping off the page at me is what does Texas A&M do extremely well defensively? They're one of the best at turning you over. They just claw at the ball. Anytime you get into the lane, there's 4 different arms grabbing and clawing. Leads to a lot of free throws, but it also leads to a lot of turnovers. Well, this is a Kentucky offense that's number 2 in the nation in preventing turnovers. They only have a turnover rate of 13.2%. That is elite. Who wins that battle? Does Zurich Phelps, does he get maybe a little bit tired towards the end of the game after just flying around all these screens, running, and you need him to play a ton because you don't have Wade Taylor? Does that become a factor in the second half? You saw in that game against Mississippi State, Cam Matthews, like 3 minutes left, you call a timeout. I need a time, like just absolutely gassed because of the sets that Kentucky's running offensively. How does that play into A&M here, and especially Zurich Phelps? Because, I mean, those forcing turnovers for A&M has been a massive reason at why they've been successful so far.
Well, before we get to picks, a couple quick notes here because now we can start looking at like conference game performance. We can look at the stats, right? And they're just with these two teams, they're so interesting because Kentucky has been the number 2 scoring offense through 3 games, averaging 90 points per game. Kentucky has been the 16th out of 16 scoring defense, allowing 90 points per game. So, it's one of those weird things, right? But then you kind of keep going a little further. And if you're saying, Max, Kentucky, great three-point shooting team. They currently lead the SEC through 3 games, 41.9% from 3. Texas A&M, meanwhile, has allowed teams to shoot 39% from 3. That's 15 out of 16. Only Missouri has allowed a higher percentage through 3 games so far. Now you have to look at the opponents, right? A&M's played Alabama. They've played Oklahoma. Who's the other team? Why am I forgetting it? Texas. So, a little of that's just kind of who have you played, basically. And again, Kentucky's played an offensive team like Florida, Mississippi State, good offensive team. And so you just, you keep going down the line. So, but still, those are things that stand out. And I think, again, it kind of goes back to I really want to see here in terms of I want to see if you're Kentucky and early on, if you're trying to find those indicators of, all right, we're going to be just fine in this game. It's coming out early on, matching the physicality that Texas A&M is going to play with, not allowing them to get 25 offensive rebounds in this game. Because like we said, basically every other miss, they're getting an offensive rebound or close to it, right? So those are all the things. Who sets the tone? I know the game's not won in the first 5 minutes, but like who is going to set the tone here? Because if I look up and A&M is playing from behind, bad recipe. If Kentucky comes out, hits 3 threes early, all of a sudden they're holding like a double-digit lead throughout the first half, and A&M's trying to catch up with a 30.9% three-point percentage, 285th nationally. They don't have their best player potentially. I don't like that setup for the Aggies.
Picks?
Have at it.
Oh, boy.
All righty. No lie. This is a tough one. I believe, if I have to predict it, I think it'll be like Kentucky -5 because I don't think Wade Taylor's going to play. So obviously, anytime we get a home favorite, you're gonna be leaning that way. If A&M's going to win this game, I think it's with defense and just making it so nasty, kind of like Ohio State did. Just Kentucky just missing layups. Everything is just contested. If it's not contested, they're second guessing it, trying to get it up on the glass too quick. Maybe Brandon Garrison gets in a little bit of foul trouble and you can't play that 5 out, or something like that. It would have to be something where it turns ugly and A&M is kind of in their comfort zone. The thing with A&M's defense, as good as it is they let you shoot over it. And they're going to let you shoot over it all game long. And I just think over the course of 40 minutes, Kentucky's going to make us. They're going to make some, whether it's Brea, whether it's Robinson, whether it's Lamont Butler, whoever, Almanor, whoever it is, they'll get their threes. If you're looking at A&M offensively, do you trust Zurich Phelps has another 34-point game like they needed to win at Oklahoma? I don't think so. I trust Kentucky more here. I'll go Cats at home.
See, I think we got a little bit of a preview of what we're going to see here in this game. And I looked at tempo, and I remember talking about this for A&M heading into the Alabama game. And A&M had not allowed a team to get into a 70-possession game its previous 7 games heading into Alabama. Guess what? Alabama got 79 possessions in that game. Also, A&M got called for a ton of fouls. That was in College Station. And Blake mentioned game flow. Alabama led the whole time. A&M made a run late. This is going to be in Rupp Arena. This just in. Teams tend to get more favorable calls in their building. I think if it becomes a foul fest, that probably hurts A&M. If you're going to get in a track meet with Kentucky, you better have enough horses to score because, boy, Kentucky's got them. Jackson Robinson hit 7 threes the other night. We know what their wings can do. We've seen Lamont Butler have some super games. We saw Almanor come off the bench to hit 3 threes in that one. I feel like this is going to be a fast-paced game with a lot of possessions and a lot of shots, and I just feel like Kentucky is much more equipped to win that kind of game, especially in its building. I will take Kentucky.
You guys got to stop putting me in this spot with Kentucky Because here we go again. Last week we did the same thing. Kentucky and Georgia, all the pressure's on me. Everybody tells me don't pick Kentucky, don't pick Kentucky. Well, if I'm not going to pick Kentucky, here's the reason why. Texas A&M, as we've noted, 7-3 in the first two quads, 7-3 this season. And how many of those wins came away from their building in College Station? Everybody thinks it's just all right. A&M gets their 40 trademark free throws at home, but they beat Creighton on a neutral court. They beat Texas Tech on a neutral court. They basically won a road game at Purdue. They won at Oklahoma. So it's one of those things where you look at what they've done away from home, and that would make me a little bit nervous probably if I'm a Kentucky fan, just because they have shown the ability to go win. A good chunk of their best wins have been away from home, right? But A&M is 259th in effective field goal percentage. They are 285th in three-point percentage. They're 214th in two-point percentage. They're 267th in free throw percentage. I'm supposed to trust those numbers going into a team that is an offensive juggernaut in Kentucky, a top 3 offensive team nationally, in their building with all those scores I brought up earlier. How many times Kentucky scored 90 or more, 100 or more in their building this season? Yes, this will be the best defensive team statistically that they played in their building this season, but we can't run away from the curse. At some point, we have to break the curse. We can't be cowards here. We have to at some point break the curse. So I know this is I made a promise again to Kentucky fans. I would not pick them in these big games after we put the kiss of death on them against Georgia. But here's what happens if I don't pick you. You're all going to think I'm nuts because Kentucky's going to be a 5-point, 6-point favorite maybe in this game. So you probably already think I'm nuts. But give me Kentucky.
Okay.
It's got to happen at some point, right? But let me say this.
Right.
I told you, and Chris said at the start of the show, that we have different opinions on this one. This one to me is a little bit more worrisome, I think, for Kentucky than you guys think it is. Just because I wonder about, and I'm even saying that to the Texas A&M guy and Max Barr, but if this thing turns into bump, like every single play somebody's getting a shoulder, I mean, it disrupts your offense. That's what A&M does. They will disrupt your offense. And so, but without Wade Taylor, if I go into it assuming he's not playing, I can't pick Texas A&M. I just can't. So.
Yeah, all I was going to say there at the end was, would we be surprised if, say, you get caught up doing something, you miss the first 5-7 minutes of the game, you turn it on, you have no clue what the score is. Texas A&M is up 13-3. Would you be surprised?
Right.
Because I wouldn't. Kentucky missed
and
the
11 of those
shots
points have come from the free throw line.
From free throw line.
Yeah. See, that was the interesting pre-show discussion. All kidding aside, we all were kind of talking about this before we hit live or hit record on the video. This could play out two very different ways, and I think Blake had his head, all right, this is how it plays out, and that doesn't favor Kentucky. And I'm thinking this is how it plays out, and that absolutely favors Kentucky. So who wins the battle of style wills may determine who wins the game.
Yep. And Kentucky's done a good job of that at home this season, playing their style. And so,
well, and see, when Alabama did that to A&M in that building, because I picked A&M to win, even with Taylor out, because I just thought they can force that style of play, especially in Reed Arena. And then it didn't happen. Alabama gets the kind of game it wanted. It was a track meet when the whistle wasn't blowing every 10 seconds in between. And that to me did not bode well for the Aggies here. We'll see.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for watching. We'll be here to recap it on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, probably Tuesday night. Tuesday night. All right. We'll talk about it live. Hope you'll join in. To do that, hit the subscribe button. That's free. Enable your notifications so you know when we go live. For Max Barr and Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching our basketball preview here at Southeastern 16.